My name is Marcela Linkova, and I'm the GenderActionplus coordinator. I will present the work that we did in our work package 3, focused on counteracting gender-based violence and sexual harassment in research, which was headed by Fredrik Bondestam from the Swedish Secretariat for Gender Research. So what were the objectives of this work? First of all, we wanted to benchmark the current state of policy development at the level of national authorities and research funding organizations. We then wanted to analyze and disseminate ongoing and planned actions at the research funder level with a focus on preventative action. Then we wanted to develop a zero-tolerance policy on gender-based violence and sexual harassment, specifically for research funding organizations, and then develop capacities among the relevant stakeholders. The main outputs that we produced in this work package was the policy analysis and an extensive literature review to establish the knowledge on the topic at the current moment. We developed 2 sets of guidelines. One is the baseline document on the current and future preventative action at research funder level, and the second is the online template for zero-tolerance policy on gender-based violence, again, targeting specifically research funding organizations. We also conducted a mutual learning workshop and developed training material that can be used in the future. And we developed 3 position papers that summarize the main recommendations that are coming from this work. So I will now, in greater detail, present the main findings from our benchmark reports. First of all, none of the 15 countries or regions that participated in the GenderActionplus survey has policies in place that target research funding organizations, and only 2 had policies that target research performing organizations. We can see that intersectional approach is also missing from the national level policymaking. Going to the research funding organizations, we can see that very few of the RFOs that participated in GenderActionplus had any new policies on gender-based violence, and there's a lack of measures that target applicants for funding, safety of researchers, or having procedures to provide information on any ongoing investigation into gender-based violence misconduct. When we look at the analysis of the policy framework, we can see that in the era, we lack a consistent overall structure. The policies are composed of divergent approaches targeting different stakeholders with measures and strategies not always being aligned. And intersectionality is a cross-cutting priority that is visible as a conceptual value, but it is rarely translated into concrete action or measures. The systematic research review shows that the global research on gender-based violence almost exclusively focuses on majority students' experiences of violations and abuse. And we can also see a prominent lack of evaluation and research on policy development. Specifically for research funding organizations, the role of RFOs is absent in research, and intersectionality is often in the foreground of the research papers analyzed. So now I will present in some detail the main outputs of this work. The first one is the relief model developed for research funding organizations. The relief model should guide the work that research funders take to develop concrete actions. So first, R is for role clarity, where research funders really need to focus on redefining themselves as key actors in the research and innovation ecosystem with their role in ending gender-based violence. E stands for ethical governance, which speaks to using ethical statutes on research misconduct as a way to inhibit perpetrator behavior and cultures at the level of research performing organizations. L stands for legal framework, and this speaks to the need to go beyond legal boundaries and define supplementary actions that should be taken by research funding organizations, such as withdrawing or withholding funding, setting up whistleblowing systems, or building support structures. I stands for internal procedures, and the main focus here is on mainstreaming gender-based violence notions throughout the entire funding process, including the fact that research performing organizations should declare that there are no ongoing processes or investigations related to a specific applicant. E stands for evaluation and monitoring. And here the focus is on integrating notions of gender-based violence in already existing evaluation and monitoring mechanisms in the funding system. And finally, F is focused on ensuring that funding is provided on research into gender-based violence, which currently is not the case. The second tangible output from this work is a proposal for an ERA infrastructure that should be implemented in the EU. This infrastructure is informed by two models. The first is the UNICEF 7P model, which spans policy, prevalence, prevention, protection, prosecution, provision of services, and partnerships. Then there is for RFOs, the relief model that I have just presented. And then for the ERA infrastructure, which recognizes the responsibility of RFOs, there is the issue of collecting and analyzing data, funding, knowledge production, so this is the research that I just mentioned, provision of services and support to victim survivors, and providing incentives and sanctions. Going further, GenderActionplus delivered 3 position papers that relate to gender-based violence, and I will now briefly describe the contents of the 3. So position paper number 4 is titled Ending Gender-Based Violence Through Research Funding, and this really establishes the core role of research funders and their responsibility in tackling gender-based violence through and in line with the relief model I just presented. It recommends building strong partnerships with other stakeholders, ensuring continuous knowledge and awareness raising internally and externally, and establishing long-term funding for research on gender-based violence. The second position paper number 5 is titled Gender-Based Violence in the Era, an Endemic Problem in Need of a New Cure. And this position paper is based on the findings from the UNICEF survey, which shows a great degree of prevalence across the EU countries. And the recommendations here are to support full compliance with the Zero Tolerance Code of Conduct adopted in 2024 by the ERA Forum subgroup on inclusive gender equality in research and innovation. Support the implementation of the Istanbul Convention in national research and innovation systems. Ensuring ending gender-based violence is a mandatory requirement in gender equality plans. And related to this is the requirement that institutions that are applying for EU funding should have also targeted support structures in place, including standardized procedures for formal reporting of incidents, and having sustained support for victims and survivors. And the last recommendation is that mobility schemes in the era should require policies to counteract gender-based violence in the applying institutions. And this includes Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions and Erasmus+, so that the same degree of policy provisions, but also support structures are available in the entire research area. The last position paper is titled Ending Gender-Based Violence to Ensure Academic Freedom, and this is the flagship position paper among these three. The main message is the acknowledgement of the reciprocal relationship between academic freedom and gender-based violence, arguing that without safety, without researchers being free from violence, research institutions cannot actually ensure freedom of expression, freedom of speech, academic freedom. The position paper also outlines threats to academic freedom that we currently face, including political interference, social and cultural censorship, technological and surveillance challenges, and then violence, hate, threats, and other forms of harassment. This work and the messages developed for this position paper are instrumental for ongoing work at the EU level, including the current work in the ERA Forum subgroup on inclusive gender equality. So this is all. Here are the contact details of the work package leader, Fredrik Bondestam, should you have any questions related to the outcomes and outputs of this work package.